Hey everybody, my name is Kiana. I am a registered nurse. I work in the emergency department and I recently received my master's in nursing education. So I will be transitioning to teaching at a university soon. This video, I am going to be addressing my experience in travel nursing. I began traveling after 2 years of experience in the ED, and it was one of the best decisions that I've made yet. I really enjoyed getting to see different places, working in different type of environments, and seeing the scale of nursing. I mean, it's so different in different states, and I am going to be breaking down some things. So first, I'm going to talk about preparing to travel. Second, I'm going to talk about finding the right travel agency, recruiter. Sorry, I didn't know what word to say. And then I'm going to talk about some important key elements to being a successful travel nurse. So stay tuned, watch this video. I'm hoping that you take away, if you are interested in being a traveler, I hope this information just helps you make the process a lot smoother. When you make the decision that you want to be a traveler, some things to consider. So when you become a travel nurse, you only get 2 days of orientation. Yes, 2 days. So I highly recommend that you don't make that move until you are very confident in your skills and you have the ability to effectively communicate. Yes, the money is good, but you also always want to put yourself in a safe, number one, you always want to put yourself in a safe position, because some of these hospitals are severely understaffed and management expects you to come in and aid them wherever they need. So it takes a little bit of skill to do that. So I just highly recommend just like sharpening your skills, practicing effective communication, and really truly making sure that you will be able to acclimate to the fast pace. So also another thing that I would like to let you guys know is it does cost money to travel. So when you make this decision, I would say maybe give yourself 6 months to try to just save money. That would go toward housing. Of course, that's going to be your most expensive expense through it all. And I'm going to go further into detail about that later in the video. But also traveling, moving, if you have a car, you're going to have to ship your car. If you have items that you may need to place in storage. Also, if you had like other commitments, because you do have to maintain a house in a state that is greater than 50 miles away to receive the stipend. And I'm also going to explain what the stipend is later in the video. So yes, preparing to travel, save. One of the things that I've learned as I was traveling was that, like I said, housing is the most expensive expense. Do not take an assignment unless you have secured housing. Now, let me break down the different types of housing. So short-term leases, that's what you're gonna find on like Furniture Finder, Airbnbs, things like that, is extremely expensive, like far more expensive than what I expected. I mean, I was staying in a guest house and I had a bed, my own bathroom, and a fridge. And I was paying like $1,700 for that. And in my mind, I was like, well, that assignment I had kind of took last minute because I really needed to go, had a bunch of things happen. Like I wrecked my car. I couldn't get back into my position at my other job that I wanted. And so I was like, I'm just gonna take this assignment because I needed the money. And so, but paying $1,700 a month for a bed, a bathroom, and a fridge is ridiculous. So some of the things that I've learned is that depending on what your goal is in traveling, if you are traveling for destination, okay, voila, spend whatever you need to spend to be comfortable in that destination. But if you are traveling to make more money, possibly pay for an expense and have a residual profit, you would want to try to go places where you have family or friends that you can stay with. One of the things that I did was I would offer my family or friends, I would pay half the rent, even if I was only occupying one of the bedrooms in their homes, just because I just thought it was a generous thing to do. I even thought of paying all of their rent because as a traveler, we make a lot of money in stipends. So I was just really grateful that I had the opportunity to stay with a family member or a friend, and I saved far more money than I did doing short-term rentals. Now, if you're like me and you like your personal space, I mean, I could stay with certain people, but certain locations that I was doing assignments, I wanted my own personal space. So I actually stayed in corporate housing when I lived in Los Angeles, and I made the mistake of doing a short-term lease. So on a short-term lease, my rent was probably like $1,000 more than what it would have been if I would have signed a 6-month contract. Now I know you're thinking like 6 months, aren't the contracts only 8 to 13 weeks? Yes, that is correct. But if you are a great nurse, oftentimes the facility that you are working at will offer to extend your contract. So be cognizant of that. Also, if they don't extend your contract because they don't like you, or if they just no longer have a need for a contracted nurse, you can also begin looking for other contracts in that area. So be mindful of that. If you want to save money, the worst thing to do is a short-term lease through Furnish Finder or Airbnb. There are some good deals on there, but oftentimes it's like price gouge. They know that we get housing stipends and they are overcharging us. So do a 6-month lease if you can. And when I say corporate housing, basically in corporate housing, these houses come with furniture, cable, and internet. So everything is included in that price. It's usually in like a high-rise building. Check that out, look into it, and see if it fits within your budget. And if so, that is my top recommendation if you like personal space. But if you want to save the most money, find family and friends that you could stay with and reach out to them, make them an offer, and then once they say it's okay, begin looking and applying for jobs in areas that are within, depending on if you like to drive. I would drive an hour, no more than an hour away from where I was staying. But there were plenty of jobs along the way. So that is something to consider for preparation. Now, let's get into the pay. So a lot of people don't really understand the way that travel nurse pay works. So you generally get a small hourly rate, but the majority of your money comes from the housing stipend. So housing stipends range depending on the location where you're staying at. It can also be negotiated. I never had to negotiate mine because I got relatively good offers, especially in California. So with that being said, your hourly rate is taxed, but you will have a weekly amount that you will get for your housing stipend. And so in that's where the majority of your money is going to come from your housing stipend. And you also have to keep in mind that you have to occupy a residence outside 50 miles outside of where you're staying. So just keep that in mind. And then also, when you are traveling, there are some important things you have to remember, that you are there to aid. You are there as help. And so don't be disgruntled if you don't get to be like the trauma nurse, or you get urgent care assignments this is just ED specific, but oftentimes I found myself in the fast track area, and it was very frustrating because I am a highly skilled emergency room nurse. And I really wanted to keep using my skills, but the way one of the managers broke it down to me was that they had a lot of new nurses, and they actually were the ones that needed that experience, because when I left, they would still be there. So I just pretty much learned to just play my role and just kind of, play the back, and whenever they needed me, they would ask for my help, and then I would give them that type of assistance. So the other thing about travel nursing is that at the end of your contract, you want to make sure that you are either going to, if they've offered an extension, if you're going to extend, then you want to make sure you have that set in stone probably about 2 weeks before. If you do not plan to extend, I recommend begin looking at other openings probably about a month before your contract expires, because you never know what the requirements are going to be for that job that you're trying to get. They may have different online training that you may have to do, or they may want certain tests and things like that. So always make sure that you have multiple recruiters. I know some people just like to stick with one, but in my experience, there are some agencies that only source certain areas and regions, and then there's other ones that compensate for where they don't. And then there's ones that have contracts with like major hospitals like Kaiser. I'm really just speaking from my California experience. I spent the most time there as a traveler. So I really got to learn kind of like the dynamics of travel agents and recruiters. And so sometimes your recruiter may not have any openings available where you want, but if you reach out to another one, they may have it in that area. And then also you just want to keep your options open so that you can weigh like the good and the bad, and you can also weigh the pay. You can see what this agency's offering and you can see what this agency's offering. It could be all jumpy all over the place, but when you first make the decision to travel, you also want to know what the agency is going to cover. Because like when I made the decision to go to California, I was with one agency and they told me that once I got my license to contact them back. And then I ended up going with another agency who actually paid for me to get my California license. And then when I got to California, unfortunately, we weren't able to find a job in the region that I wanted. So I ended up going back to the agency that I had been working with. No penalty. It wasn't any ill will. I could still go back to that agency and work with that agency. And then even with my first job, I ended up finding another agency that really sourced the Northern California region, because the agency that I was with mainly sourced the Southern California region. So those are just some things to consider when traveling. Also, if you have pets, it would be nice if you could find someone to watch your pets. There are very strict limitations on pets in travel in the short-term housing. There are people that travel with their dogs. I've just seen that most people don't want any pets because they plan to flip the location that you're staying at as soon as you leave. And they don't want to have to go through deep cleaning. They want it to be readily available. So I've seen a lot of listings that said absolutely no pet. And then also, who's going to watch your dog for 12 hours while you're at work? I mean, I know I don't have any pets. I couldn't even imagine like leaving my dog locked up for 12 hours, you know, for 3 days a week. And then that's also something you want to discuss. How many days a week are you going to be working? During coronavirus time, pandemic time, I have seen some nurses take contracts that require them to work 5 days a week. So you also have to be very specific about your availability with your recruiter and also with the company that you're going to be working for. Like me, I only work 3 days a week no matter what. I am a 3-day person. They have done things like put me on for 5 days on the road, 1 day off. And I just kind of bite the bullet because at the end of the day, you know, it's still only 3 days a week and I will have a very long time off. So that's something to consider. And if you have any important dates that you need off, you should make sure that it is included in your contract. Because I fell into an issue where I was supposed to have a certain amount of days off and me and my recruiter discussed it, but it didn't make it in my contract. So when the days were coming up, I went to discuss it with the scheduler and she was like, oh no, we can't give you that time off. And I mean, this was not a small trip. This was a huge trip. And I mean, huge. I went to Africa. And I was there for a month and a half. And so with that being said, I just want to let you know there are consequences for canceling your contract. I actually ended up getting banned from that entire company and I have not been able to reverse that. Luckily, I moved back. Well, I never lived in California, but I just came back to Texas and I'm doing per diem contracts now, and I will do a video about that. If you guys would like, just drop a comment in the comment section letting me know if you guys want to learn more about per diem and local contracts. But yeah, to make a long story short, I am DNR'd, which means do not return, because I put in a 2-week notice. I only had 1 week left in that contract and they banned me from the entire hospital. And Honestly, it is a headache. You do not want to be DNR from an entire company because, like I said, for instance, there are certain companies that reign in certain areas. So in this specific area, my father actually lived within the city. Were owned by the company that I was DNR from. So I never actually got to work within the city where my father lives. I always had to work on the outskirts, drive like an hour or so. And even after like a year or so passed, I mean, I reached out to the company and nobody knew how to reverse it. So if you can, just finish out your contract unless you are in like an unsafe condition. I don't recommend staying, but if it's something like time off that, you know, that wasn't included in your contract, then I just recommend that you try your best to work it out with the scheduler and maybe find somebody to replace you. But you do not want to be DNR.
10. Rounding second.
It was definitely worth it. One of the best experiences of my life. I do it again. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like, and share this video.